If you're a gamer, a movie buff, or a bona fide TV addict, chances are that someone at some point has told you to cut it out. It'll rot your brain, they say. Why don't you spend your time doing something more valuable? Well, what if you told these people that you weren't just sitting around doing nothing? You were training to save lives. That's right, there have been numerous insane examples of lives being saved with vital techniques learned from video games, TVs, and movies. Here are some of the craziest real-life examples of how being an avid couch potato has saved the day. First, we're off to Norway in 2007, to the home of 12-year-old Hans Jorgen Olsen. Little Hans was a prolific player of the MMORPG World of Warcraft, one of the most popular online games in the world. He ate, slept, and breathed Warcraft. For his parents, just how much time Hans was spending on the computer was probably a cause for concern, until it saved him and his sister in a life-or-death situation. The siblings were walking through the local woods minding their own business when they ran afoul of an extremely ill-tempered, territorial moose. Whether or not you'd find that scary depends on whether you've seen a moose up close before. They're absolutely huge animals who can run considerably faster than humans, and while they're not typically aggressive, when provoked they can cause devastating damage by trampling or ramming with their antlers. An adult moose can total a car, so for a 12-year-old and his younger sister, the chances of surviving a moose attack are frighteningly low. Thankfully for both of them, Hans's hundreds of hours clocked playing World of Warcraft were about to save them both. As the moose attacked him and his sister, Hans' mind was racing. His life wasn't flashing before his eyes, but his WoW character's abilities certainly were. Because Hans had the makings of a true hero, his first priority was getting his sister out of the danger zone. That's why the taunt skill came to mind. In the game, taunts are typically used by tanking warriors to draw mobs toward them, sometimes in order to save weaker players. He yells at the moose, distracting it for just long enough to allow his sister to escape. Now, it was just Hans and the moose. He couldn't fight this thing, and unlike a World of Warcraft character, Hans didn't have a sword or any magic at his disposal. He did, however, have one more trick up his sleeve: feign death. A technique in the game that causes enemies to lose interest in you, saving your life, and for Hans Jorgen Olsen, it did just that. He played possum, and soon enough, the moose lost interest and left. Hans had just saved his sister's life and his own, all because he was a devoted World of Warcraft player. But things are about to get a whole lot crazier in our second example of how video games have saved lives. Later in 2007, 28-year-old Paxton Galvanic of Silver Spring, Maryland, saved 2 lives as a first responder because of the popular PC game America's Army. He was traveling west on the I-40 in North Carolina when he saw an SUV on the other side of the road get into a devastating crash, flipping 5 times before landing in a brutal wreck. Upon seeing this, Paxton slammed the brakes and jumped into action. Some background on the America's Army game is crucial for understanding why Paxton was ready for the situation. Unlike your average Call of Duty game, America's Army was literally developed by the US military in order to realistically simulate US combat deployment. Paxton wanted to play as an Army medic, and in order to qualify for that position in-game, he had to complete a realistic training course based on a real US Army medic training. As a result, despite not being an enlisted member of the US military, Paxton was entering the situation with what was practically a military level of training. He ran over to the car and found 2 injured people inside. After assessing the situation as safe, he helped the passenger, who had more minor injuries, out of the car. He then attended to the driver, who had a head injury and was missing 2 fingers from the crash. Paxton kept calm and approached the situation with his video game training in mind. Paxton found a towel and applied pressure to the driver's forehead while instructing him to keep his hand elevated and apply pressure to the missing fingers in order to stem the bleeding. Paxton was relieved from his amateur medic duties when a real Army medic happened to appear on the scene. But the medic commented on how Paxton had done a truly excellent job. Paxton later sent a letter to the developers of America's Army to thank them for helping him in his situation. Colonel Casey Wardinsky, the project director behind the game, later said in a statement, "Paxton is a true hero. We're pleased to have played a role in providing life-saving training that he employed so successfully at the scene." But it's not just the video games that can come in handy during a sudden crisis situation. If nothing excites you more than catching a new movie, then you're in luck, because movies save their fair share of lives as well. Here are some insane examples of how watching the right movies can turn even kids into heroes and survivalists. Take young Jacob O'Connor, a 10-year-old from Detroit, Michigan. In July of 2017, Jacob's life was thrust into a sudden nightmare when his 2-year-old brother Dylan found a way to open the screen door at his grandmother's house. The curious toddler strolled out into his grandmother's yard and tripped, falling into his grandma's swimming pool and going underwater for over a minute, which is a pretty easy way to drown, especially for someone so young. And sadly, 2-year-old Dylan O'Connor probably would have drowned right there in his grandmother's swimming pool. if it wasn't for the fact that his older brother Jacob was a big fan of the 2015 Dwayne Johnson disaster movie San Andreas. The movie tells the story of a rescue chopper operator trying to save his ex-wife and daughter in the aftermath of a devastating earthquake. The earthquake causes other natural disasters, including a tsunami that floods the city. In one scene, Johnson's character performs CPR on his daughter after saving her from a flooded building. This particular scene was something that Jacob committed to memory, and it allowed him to save his brother's life. Jacob immediately leapt into the water and pulled his brother out before doing compressions, exactly as he'd seen play out in the movie. This brought the O'Connor family enough time to get Dylan to the hospital, where after an extremely tense day, he fully recovered. His family even reported that upon release, Dylan was eager to get back into the pool. And amazingly, the story doesn't end here either. When the tale of Jacob's daring rescue went viral and became a national story, Dwayne Johnson himself took notice. Johnson was inspired by the story and by Jacob's bravery, so he reached out to the O'Connor family to arrange a set visit for his latest movie. Jacob O'Connor received a hero's welcome and a heartwarming hug from the Hollywood star on the set of Skyscraper later that year. Now, almost drowning is one thing, but imagine being attacked by a swarm of enraged bees and then accidentally impaling yourself through the face with a meat skewer while trying to escape. And what's more, there's nobody there to help you on this one. This is exactly what happened to 11-year-old Xavier Cunningham of Harrisonville, Missouri, in February of 2019. From undergoing these horrific injuries at such a young age with nobody there to help, you'd think that young Xavier would be done for. But he had an unlikely ally in his greatest moment of danger, Marvel superhero Black Panther. Let's go back to the beginning. Xavier was playing in the treehouse in his backyard when suddenly he heard a furious buzzing all around him. He was being attacked by a swarm of bees. Naturally, Xavier panicked and tried to get out of the enclosed treehouse as quickly as possible. However, on the way out, he lost his footing and fell 4 feet below. Xavier landed face first on a meat skewer that was laying in his backyard. The skewer passed through his face all the way through to the back of his skull. Scientists at the University of Kansas Hospital said that the fact that the skewer missed all of Xavier's vital nerves and brainstem was a 1-in-a-million miracle. But Xavier's struggle wasn't over yet. He needed to get inside and get help for his horrific injuries, but he had this skewer sticking out of his face. Every natural instinct told him to get this agonizing thing out of him, but he didn't give in to those urges. Why? Because Xavier Cunningham was a huge fan of Black Panther, and he remembered how that movie ended. At the end of the movie, Black Panther stabs the villain Eric Killmonger with a dagger. Killmonger only dies when he removes the dagger, causing catastrophic blood loss. It was remembering this moment in the movie that saved Xavier from experiencing the same fate. Instead, he was found and taken to a hospital where he underwent several hours of surgery to successfully remove the skewer. If Xavier hadn't seen Black Panther and tried to remove the skewer himself, he probably wouldn't have been so lucky. And if you think that's nuts, imagine if a movie about a murderous psychopath actually saved you from falling victim to one. That's exactly what happened to one fan of the classic John Carpenter slasher movie Halloween, in which mask-wearing maniac Michael Myers stalks embattled babysitter Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. At the 2018 San Diego Comic-Con, Curtis was approached by a tearful fan who told her how watching the movie had saved his life some years before. He recounted being in a terrifying home invasion situation where an unknown intruder was trying to break in. The fan said, "I was scared out of my mind, and out of nowhere this thought came inside of me. What would Jamie Lee Curtis do?" And acting on this thought saved his life. Inspired by the events of the movie, he grabbed a knitting needle as a defensive weapon and ran screaming to the neighbor's house. The intruder fled and he was saved. The fan then shared a tearful hug with Curtis, forever grateful for making the movie that saved his life. Finally, for two of the craziest stories of all, we move to the world of television. As it turns out, the small screen can have a huge impact on the lives of people who watch it. One great example is the story of Teresa Booth, a mother from St. Martin, Minnesota. In April of 2007, she and her baby Emily underwent a total nightmare when they hit an icy patch on the road and careened off into a nearby body of water. The car was filling up fast, and no matter how hard she tried, she just couldn't open the doors. Needless to say, things were looking bleak for the Booths. They would have frozen and drowned right there, were it not for Teresa Booth being an avid Mythbusters fan. From watching an episode of Mythbusters, she knew that she had to wait for the car to fill entirely, equalizing the pressure before she could open the door. And that's exactly what she did, allowing her and her baby Emily to safely escape the car and live to tell their amazing tale. Finally, the most amazing and unbelievable real tale of all. If you listen to the successful Dirty John podcast or watch the Eric Bana Netflix movie adaptation, you'll be familiar with the plight of Tara Newell. She and her family had been stalked, harassed, and abused by her deranged stepfather John Meehan. However, one day in 2016, things boiled over into truly horrific circumstances. John attempted to kidnap and murder Tara out of spite. As Tara attempted to get into her car, John attacked her, grabbing her from behind. John clearly had dark intentions. In his vehicle, he had a so-called kidnap kit. This kit included a backpack, camouflage duct tape, 13 cable ties, 6 knives, a passport, and a vial of injectable testosterone. He covered her mouth and tried to drag her away to a horrible demise. But thankfully, Tara had one trick up her sleeve that John didn't account for. She had an extensive knowledge of The Walking Dead. Taking a cue from the zombie mega hit, she sank her teeth into John's hand, freeing her mouth and instigating a brawl where he attempted to stab her to death. But Tara got incredibly lucky and managed to wrestle the blade from John's hand. Now that she was the one holding the weapon, she didn't hesitate, knowing from the show that to truly kill a zombie or a crazed kidnapper, you have to go for the head. Channeling Rick Grimes, she took the knife and stabbed it into John's eye, finally killing him. The Walking Dead had allowed her to walk away alive in this last amazing example of how the games you play and the movies and TV you watch really can save your life. Did you know that watching the Infographics show can also save your life? Why not learn some survival tactics of your own from videos like Surviving 72 Hours in a Forest Alone, Challenge and Experiment, and What You Should Do to Survive in the Wilderness? You'll never know when you'll need it.